I received this notice with my Hi-Point carbine when it was recently returned from repair. It was failing to extract cases from the chamber. Now it works fine. Thanks, Hi-Point. All it cost me was the money to ship it. The labor, parts, and shipping back was all free. Also, I sent one of my original magazine with it, which was the old style on the right. Hi-Point sent back 2 of the new style, and the old style may not have proper clearance and could damage the firearm. Thanks again, Hi-Point. But the interesting part of this piece of paper is what's on the other side. This is the more interesting side of the paper. It says hang fires and how to avoid them. In the border around the printing, it keeps repeating, shake your ammo. At the bottom it says hang fires can be avoided, shake your ammo. This is a new idea to me. I'll read what it says. It is generally accepted that commercial ammunition, no matter how old, is high quality and cannot fail. Experienced gun people know better. Most of us have experienced rimfire ammunition that some of it does not fire, it's a misfire. Any ammo can be, quote, spoiled, unquote, by subjecting it to changes in temperature. I agree with that because of the recommendations to store ammunition, powder, and primers in a cool, dry place to prolong its shelf life. These fluctuations can cause moisture to enter around the primer pocket and condense in the powder in the flash hole. Now, I don't know about that. I know that ammunition can degrade over time, but I don't know exactly why. This is dangerous for semi-automatic and full automatic weapons because when the primer is set off, instead of instantly lighting the powder charge, it is interrupted by the wet powder in the flash hole. That makes sense if wet powder is slower to ignite or perhaps does not even ignite at all. So I could agree with that. Wet powder is bad. You've probably heard the expression, keep your powder dry. I think that was from the days of black powder and muzzle-loading firearms, where wet black powder wouldn't ignite, though I actually haven't tried it. The primer has enough back pressure to open the slide or bolt. Now, I think that's not true, though I also have not tried that. I'd like to test it. And then the powder charge is set off with the breech open, releasing great pressure inside the rifle or pistol. That doesn't sound like it's possible to me. The only thing I can think of is if the wet powder is slower to ignite and the shooter thinks it's a misfire and goes to eject the cartridge, but it's a hang fire and opens the action and pulls out the cartridge, and then the hang fire goes off, that could cause the cartridge to blow up and maybe even damage the firearm. The result can be damage to the magazine frame or even the slide or bolt. So the first part of this that I'd like to test is the primer has enough back pressure to open the slide or bolt. I think that's impossible, but I'd like to test that. Down at the bottom it says, nearly all of this can be avoided by simply shaking the ammo to move the damp powder out of the flash hole, allowing the cartridge to function normally. That's one I haven't heard, but I'd like to test that as well. I want to test that the primer has enough back pressure to open the slide or bolt. And I want to do that by loading cartridges with no powder, and I'm going to use small pistol primers. So I'll be loading in 9mm Luger cases, and I'll use some of my cast bullets. I know that cartridges with no powder is not the best test, because when the primer ignites, it's going to release gas as it burns. The gas is going to fill the area in the cartridge case underneath the bullet, and with more space, there being no powder, it won't create as much pressure. So I need something to take up the space of the powder to give a similar test for when there's powder in the case, so that the primer gives similar pressure. So my plan is to roll up some paper towel. I guess that's just one thickness. Roll up some paper towel and stuff it in the case. That way, paper towel will take up space. It won't burn like powder, of course. It won't give off as much gas as powder, and hopefully that's a better test of how much pressure would be built up when the primer fires and the powder doesn't burn if the powder was wet. I'm going to test if the primer firing without any powder burning will open the action of a high-point carbine and 9mm Luger, and if there was a delay on the powder burning, if the action was partly open in the case, cartridge case, partly out of the chamber, and then the powder burned, it could explode the cartridge case. I don't think it can happen that the primer alone can push back the bolt. But before I do all that, I'll show you the rifle is working normally by firing some cartridges. Okay, now first up I have small pistol primers with no powder. Now, small pistol Magnum primer with toilet paper in the case. I'm sorry, paper towels. I'm saying toilet paper, it wasn't, it was paper towels.